Here we go. All right, everybody. It is good to see you guys again. It's John Gator. We're here again live from Wellington. And as you guys can see again, I am not by myself. Before I start and introduce my guest, I do want to make sure that I go over and do clarify. Yes, I am on the Board of Trustees here in the town of Wellington, but anything that I do share is my personal opinion, as it's always been my whole life. But now that I'm an elected official, I have to say that. But so I don't represent the board. I don't represent the town of Wellington. I represent myself. But today I am excited. We have the opportunity to talk with Aislinn Kotwitz, who is running for county commissioner for Larimer County. So Aislinn, I want to give you a chance to introduce yourself to everybody and tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're running for county commissioner here in Larimer County.
Sure, I'd love to. Thanks for having me on, and congratulations again on winning and being a trustee.
Thank you.
So my name is Aislinn Kotwitz, and I am running for District 3 in Larimer County. So that's you have to live in the southern third of the county. Tom Donnelly currently holds that seat, who has actually endorsed me to be his successor. And a little bit about me. So I grew up in a small agricultural family in southeastern Colorado. Really raised with the principles there of faith, family, and service. And so I've always been one to serve, moved up here to go to Colorado State University to study water and mineral to help the farmers and ranchers. That led to 20 years of working for the Republican Party, everything from being on the county board to working for various candidates and initiatives, local, statewide, national. I actually ended up then going and working for the federal level. I worked on agricultural, natural resource, and energy issues for the federal government. So obviously those issues are near and dear to my heart and have a lot of experience with those. And then throughout that whole time, I just, helping and serving, obviously volunteering a lot. I work on senior health issues. So I'm on some boards for senior health. I also big advocate of 4-H, have been a volunteer with them for 20 years plus, and now I have my own 4-Hers. But in addition to that, then there became an opportunity, a seat that opened on the Fort Collins City Council, and I was approached and asked to run for that. And shockingly, I had never really had interest in running for office myself. I was, always kind of thought I'd be the man behind the man, and that opportunity arose. And obviously, I was very engaged, had gone to all the meetings, been really involved on the city level, but I ran for office and I won. And so I was able to serve on the Fort Collins City Council. And that's truly where I fell in love with local politics, much more than other politics. As you very well know now, you think you know a lot going to all the meetings until you get in office and actually start making those decisions and all that goes on in the background. And so I had a steep learning curve there. I was able to overcome that. But what I think I found, aside from the issues, there's so many of them that are nonpartisan, but even the partisan issues, it's water, it's transportation, it's trash. And it sounds odd, but I love talking about trash, right? And the landfill. And, those are just so important. They affect people every single day, and utilities, all safety, fire, police. I was on the Poudre Fire Authority. I was the vice chair of that board, the fair board. And the great thing was not only working on those issues, but was also every time you ran to the grocery store, you ran into someone who was either upset or needed more information or happy, but you were consistently with the people that you're representing. And I really appreciate that. It's not a mass amount of communication to the point where I've been able and have responded to every single constituent, phone calls, emails, and, there are lots of them. But that's amazing. I think that's amazing. I don't have staff telling me. I got to interact with people daily, and often ones that didn't disagree or didn't agree with me. So that was really great. And so, so I was on the Fort Collins City Council balancing $300 million budget. A lot of overlap with what county commissioners do. I also am on the board of Liberty Common School. It's a charter school in Fort Collins. I did that after I was on city council. That's where my daughters go to school. And again, balancing that budget and working with the state level quite significantly on school of choice. I've worked a lot down in Denver trying to push different issues. And there's been several of those. But and so, that kind of led me to where I am today. And the bonus is very similar to the issues on city council, but it also goes back to my roots with agriculture and energy issues and really water issues for the entire county. And that's really what I love. I'm not interested in going and pontificating and seeing who's a bigger ideologue. I'm, here to do the real work and work and serve the people. So, and the reason, I guess, I think the other question was why I'm running. Was that right?
Yeah.
So I'm running because I love all those things, but really, I'm not running for myself. I work in healthcare administration now, so I'm not looking for a job. Obviously been promoting the principals for 20 years, and I just really think the time is right now. If Larimer County, we're going to go from having almost 40 years of experience between the late Lou Gator, who you might be familiar with,
Just a little bit.
and Tom Donnelly and Steve Johnson. And we're going to go to just 2 years of experience with John Cafalis. And, we can look around what's going on right now. And we desperately need someone who can not just do the job on day one, but can lead that commission, that board of commissioners. And so that's why the time is right. Right now is I really desperately think we need that. We need to know that who we're putting in there is who they say they are. I have a voting record. I'm the only one that does. So you know what my principles are. You know what my values are before I even start. And then in addition to that is, obviously I believe in the conservative principles of the Republican Party. And we need someone who can win in the general election. In Larimer County, it's changing. And, I think it's time for a fresh face and we move forward. If we keep doing the same old things, we're going to get the same results. So I think that's really why the time was right now and running. So
That's awesome.
that was long.
That was great. No, that's awesome. So I have a couple of questions. I do want to open this up to the audience as well. So if you guys do have any questions for Aislinn, do go ahead and put those in the chat. She would love to answer them and share with you guys. And I think that's one of the things that I appreciate, Aislinn, about you the first time that we chatted is really that desire to really understand what it is that the citizens of Larimer County want to see happen. And I think that's great. So kind of on that note, when you look at Larimer County, where we are right now, what we're going to face in the next 5 to 10 years, what would you say kind of the biggest challenge or the biggest opportunity would be?
I think the biggest challenge is going to be the economy. Everybody's saying it, so it sounds, trite, but it's true. And I was on Fort Collins City Council actually during the last downturn, and it was a challenge. There are a lot of cuts that had to be made, and it's tough to make some of those decisions. When the revenue's down, you have to make some choices and prioritize. And it sounds easy to say, "Oh, I cut this or cut that," but there's so many nuances that come with government. A lot of what the county commissioners do that is actually mandated by the state. A big portion of their budget is mandated by the state. And so I think it's not just dealing with the economy and when we take this downturn and have a decreased revenue, but I think that it's going to include prioritizing all of that. But it's having that foresight is so important. And you talked about talking with other people. So often you see elected officials who are experts in everything, which amazes me because I'm not. But looking to the people in the community who are experts, and frankly, we had a beautiful example of that during COVID. Two huge, beautiful examples. Number one was deregulation. So working in healthcare, the hospitals here were able to respond so quickly. And guess why that was? It's because they started deregulating everything so that we could respond quickly and do the jobs that we needed to do. And that's huge. And it proved itself, right? And so I think we really need to take a serious look at that. In addition to that, it was the innovation or the partnerships with private. And people talk about it all the time, but it actually works. You saw that with the distilleries making hand sanitizers, Woodward Governor making ventilators. And I'll tell you, I just have kind of a funny little story, but not funny, it's pretty powerful actually. But my exterminator was here at the beginning of COVID, just before Governor Polis had, put us on stay-at-home orders. And he said, "Hey, I know you're a nurse. I know you're running for office. You've been an elected official. We've known each other for quite a long time." He said, "Hey, we have this equipment. We have this bed bug equipment. It could actually decontaminate PPE." And so I said, "Oh, yes, that would work. And you know what we need? We need this for nurses. Like you can put a whole nurse inside a room, or any staff member, maintenance worker, doctor, whatever, can go into a room and completely decontaminate before they go home." And in addition, this PPE shortage was a real thing. that you could decontaminate whole rooms, massive amounts, all with equipment they use to treat bed bugs. It's quality controlled. It exists right now. We could send it to all the hospitals. And so here's this amazing idea, but we had to get it through bureaucracy, right? And so, I mean, there you go, a nurse or healthcare person, an exterminator come up with this idea. And actually just last week, we got a letter from the CDPHE allowing that to work so that hospitals,
Nice.
businesses, as schools go back to school, they may need to decontaminate their PPE. Who knows, right? But we're really looking for, it's innovation like that and listening, things like that that are really important. The other big piece is when you're making these tough decisions and reprioritizing, you have to have foresight. So often it seems simple at the time, but there are often consequences that but there are almost always unintended consequences with any policy that you make. And having that experience and understanding that, also looking outside of your little bubble of government, is really important to make sure that those intended and unintended consequences are included in your decision making. And there's creative ways to solve the budget shortfall. They wanted to shut down all the parks and the splash parks in the whole city of Fort Collins during the last downturn. I do think that was pointed at me somewhat because that was the only rec in my district and I wasn't supporting one of their projects. But what we did is I took it to the community. Okay, hey, we need $20,000 to turn these on for the summer. These are important to the community. I've heard them. Some people, this is their only rec. And so I went to the private industry, to the public, and we were able to raise that money within a week and get those fountains or the splash parks turned back on. And so
Wow.
it's all about, I think, thinking outside of the box too, and we don't have that often. So I said economy, obviously the healthcare, public health is a large portion of what county commissioners do, and safety, including the sheriff's department. He's his own elected official, but does get his budget from the county commissioners. And there's going to be a lot of work that needs to be done with our county treasurer. She's done an amazing job. Our former commissioners have also done great with maintaining a high level or a reasonable level of reserves. And we need to consider that as we move forward, not just spending it because we're in an economic downturn also. So
Awesome.
that was a long, I feel like my
Hey,
answers are
hey, that's great. I mean, really, a lot of this is my goal with doing these interviews. Is I really want people to have a chance to hear from the candidates because I know, you guys are all out there working really hard, but there's so many people in Larimer County that it's hard to get to every door and talk to every person. So if we can just get one more person out there to hear, that's great. So no worries on the long
Thank you.
answers. So kind of a question I have for you as well, more specific to Wellington. As you look at, I know you and I have had a chance to talk about Wellington a little bit, but maybe if you could share just kind of your thoughts on Wellington and potentially some of the challenges that are things that we have that we need to be looking at here in the next few years and ways that we may be able to work alongside Larimer County to address those.
Mhm. I think Wellington specifically, you do have a large agricultural community compared to a lot of the communities, and not just in town, but just right outside of town that is still within
Mm.
Wellington. And we've seen it over the last 20 years, the devaluing, the increased mandates on those farmers and ranchers. I've heard a lot of talk during this campaign about carbon sequestering from other candidates. I'm absolutely opposed to that. But working with us to ensure, because there's that crossover between municipal water access and then county water access and water storage projects, that's going to be huge. I know with the Montava development that's way up north, kind of close to you, but the traffic issues are all going to affect you. And no matter what the issue, with building the new school, you get into this environment. Well, that's the city or this part's the county. And that's not how it should work at all. And frankly, I'm grateful that you and I already have a strong relationship. And I have some strong relationships with actually all the other municipalities as well. Let's get back together. We used to have this really strong partnership regionally. Hey, we need to talk together about these issues up in Wellington and this transportation issue. We're putting in this new school, this road, this corner is a little scary, a lot.
Yes.
It's scary for me. I can't imagine my daughter driving on it.
Right.
But it's not a vacuum. Wellington is not in a vacuum. Larimer County is not, and we have to have both seats at the table, regardless of jurisdiction. There is impact on both sides. With the economy too, we used to have the Northern Colorado Economic Development Commission, and that has since fallen apart. I'm not really sure the reason for that, but that is something where you're going to have in order to maintain those businesses in Wellington, especially where you have probably less of a less of a population to support those small businesses. So those are a couple of really big issues. I feel like I'm missing a really big one, but
No, I think that's great. And I like that you brought up something that I don't hear about. Right, I hear about the water all the time, and that's that. Granted, that's an issue. We're working on that, and that's more of a conversation between the town and Hooter. But I like the point on the farmers, because we do. I know I sit in on Commissioner Kafalis's meetings, and we've had a lot of things that have come up that have been related to some of the agriculture that does surround our town. So I think that's something that's a very big concern as well. So I do want to open it up to any questions from people that are watching. So if you guys do have anything, go ahead and throw those questions into the chat. I do want to share a question with you, Aislinn. This was actually asked of me by one of the citizens of our town earlier this week, and I'm not sure if she was able to hop on today. But in regards to healthcare, she wanted kind of to hear your thoughts on healthcare, and especially as we're looking at these vaccine bill that was just passed through our legislature, and whether we should be having mandatory vaccinations, or should there be parental choice or parental rights in that manner. So could you maybe address that and share your thoughts there?
I'm very passionate about this issue. I actually fought the bill that was proposed last cycle in the state legislature. So yeah, I'm absolutely opposed to it for a multitude of reasons. I do work in healthcare. Obviously, I believe in Western medicine. I do vaccinate my children for a lot of things, so I'm not anti-vaccination personally. However, that is absolutely my choice. And 100%, there is no government, politician, person who knows better than I do about the health of myself and my children. And so I think that is a gross overstep. In fact, I would venture to go so far as to say it's unconstitutional. The next portion of that is, aside from just on principle, is there are, I've already heard even with this bill that they're going to mandate this COVID vaccine, which we don't have the side effects or the information or any of that, and it hasn't been out for a long time. And so to me, that's particularly scary, because where is the information and the research coming from? It's not even available before, this is forced on. The other, I think, big issue regarding this is well, it's the big vax. It's making my kids put something in their bodies that I may not agree with, but it's the release of their information. And that is so important. Health information should be protected above all. We have these HIPAA laws. You wouldn't believe the hoops we have to get to even log into our computers, because we have people's health information. That is absolutely the way it's supposed to be. Children should not be no different. For a decision that I make, my child is supposed to register on some list that they never put themselves on under the age of 18, and that will be with them forever. The school district having that information and the state government, that is not appropriate. Just as I wouldn't want the school to share any information about my child with the state government, it's just not their role. And I'm very concerned about what's done with that information, where it's going to go, and how it's protected. My guess is it will not be protected with the stringent qualifications that we have to do now. And frankly, I'll say that concerns me about these businesses who are being forced to take temperatures and things like that of patrons and employees. And I'll tell you that the gal that does my hair was asking me about it, and I said, don't write it down. Don't write it down anywhere, because you now have somebody's health information, and you're responsible to protect that. And for small business to go through what a hospital has to do to protect that information is wrong and inappropriate, and again, unconstitutional. So I feel very strongly about that. Thank you for that question.
No, absolutely, and thank you for that answer. I guess I did have another question. This actually did come up this last week. Is with a lot of, obviously we have COVID-19 going on, and there's been a lot of restrictions that have been placed on businesses and things put in place. But one of the big concerns that's come out is what those restrictions should look like for churches and houses of worship, because we start to run into issues there. So I wanted to kind of get your perspective on that. Is, should all these restrictions that are being applied to everything right now, should those be applied and enforced against places of worship and limiting people's ability to go to church?
No, and we're protected by that with the Constitution, right? And our rights to religious freedom and to worship. And so I don't agree with that. And there's several issues I have. And, rather than looking backward at what's been done, it's hard to tell, what effect that did or didn't have. I don't think we'll ever know the answers to that. But moving forward, these small business, these blanket restrictions and mandates are not one size fits all. They can be. In addition to that, there's just, again, it's not based on a mass amount of information. There's a small amount of information out there, but not a mass amount. And I think that when it comes to like the small businesses in Wellington versus the small businesses in maybe downtown Fort Collins, they're very different, right? It's a
Right.
very different environment, which I'm sure is why a lot of people live in Wellington, choose to live in Wellington instead of Fort Collins. But it's not one size fits all. And I'll tell you, any business owner I've ever worked with, in the city of Fort Collins, for example, they know best how to take care of themselves and their employees and their customers. Um, and so, yeah, short answer is, I think moving forward, I would be very interested in looking into any mandates and regulations that are not really based on um, A, the Constitution, and B, scientific fact.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Well,
Yeah.
I will give a minute here, but I think that's like all the questions I've gotten so far.
Okay.
No one else has put anything new in chat. So before we kind of close things out, I know you took time away from your family, and I really appreciate you making time to do that. Could you share with people, one, ways that they can get a hold of you if they have questions or want to talk to you, as well if they want to learn more about your campaign or even help with your campaign? What does that look like?
Sure. Well, and I'd just like to say, it's so important to vote and educate yourself before you vote. I know that I get, 20 to 30 phone calls every election cycle. Who am I supposed to vote for? And it is really important. And this primary election is going to be very, very important. Who we pick will determine the path that the commissioners take. Should conservatives, I'm running in a Republican primary, should we lose these 2 seats, we will not have another opportunity for at least 10 years. And that's a pretty long cycle. And it will be a drastic change into the culture that we have right now with commissioners. So everybody should have their primary ballots already in the mail.
Yep.
They are due back by June 30th. And I would say you're still safe to mail them. But it's just so important that you get those filled out. I am happy to talk to anybody. I've responded to every single email, phone call, Facebook message, Facebook comment myself. And I think that that's my job, is not just as someone running a campaign, but an elected official. And so please reach out. My website, I am not a good weather person,
There you
is
go. You
where
got it. You got it.
hopefully I'll go back in and put it in the comments of this as well. But on there is my personal phone number, my personal email address. Please call me, text me, email me. I'd be happy to discuss any issue with you. I'll be forthright and honest. I mean, on the city council, I was outnumbered 5-2, maybe 4-3. But I never changed my values or anything. And I was always very upfront on where I was coming from and my beliefs. And I think, frankly, I've had a few campaign checks from people who are the opposite ideologically as me, but we were able to have these kinds of discussions. And so you know what you get with me. And so please ask me anything you've got. I can take it. As far as help, we are in crunch time. I was just walking every neighborhood, every block there in Wellington. We are doing that. We could use help with that, making phone calls, just trying to share the message. And if you believe in my message, share with your friends. That's what really means the most, is when you are someone that people trust and care about, and you say, hey, Aislinn Kotwitz for this reason, that means so much. So share with your friends. This election is pivotal. And so, yeah, phone calls and vote. And that's what I've got. But please reach out to me anytime. John, thank you so much for having me and helping to get the word out. It means so much, not just for me, but for all the voters. It's making it accessible, and I appreciate that. And I know that's what you ran on too. So
yes, no, absolutely. I want to see more interaction with the public and the elected officials. So I appreciate you coming out and doing this. And I know this is your day with family, so I want to let you get back to them. So have a great time with your family. And Aislinn, thank you again so much.
I appreciate you. Bye.
All right, guys, give me 1 second here. I'm gonna switch a couple of things, and then we will get things rolling with the rest of our schedule. One moment here. All right. So I'm gonna go over, get my things put back together here, but I'm gonna go over the past board plan that we had, and then I'm gonna go a little bit over the work session that we have coming up. And then I did also want to touch on a couple of other things that we have coming up here. So we will go right into this last board meeting. So we had our normal board meeting, which I know I've talked a lot about for you guys. So if you guys do have any questions on that, do go ahead and let me know. But this was a really good board meeting. The one thing that I really wanted to talk about first off is we had an excellent comment was brought up by Christy Cannon at the board plan, and she had made the request that we start in the minute meetings right now for the town of Wellington on the board meetings. There is actually no record of what trustee voted for what, which is a huge deal when we're talking about accountability and transparency. And Christy Cannon brought that up and asked that those be kept in the minute meetings, which was, I'm so grateful she brought that up. I actually had a conversation earlier that morning with our town administrator about that very same issue, and I was ecstatic to hear Christy Cannon bring that up. So Christy, thank you so much for bringing that up to the board, and that is going to be part of our minutes moving forward from our last meeting, that it will be recorded which trustee voted for what and how they voted. Because again, that's part of the way that you as the public, if you weren't at the meeting, you need to be able to hold us accountable for what we do. Because again, we are there to represent you. So if we, vote in a way that you don't agree with or you have an issue with, that you have the ability to have that information and come and talk to us. So really, really appreciated that being brought up, because I think it was I think it was huge. I think it's something we have to have. I ran on this when I campaigned, and I've talked about this a lot, that we need to have that transparency, that communication between the public and the elected officials. So I was very, very excited to hear that brought up, and I think that was highly important. And Melissa Whitehouse also had made the same comment that she wanted to see the same thing. So again, thank you to both of you that brought that up, and I think that was hugely important. So then we had a presentation by Safe Built, which is, they are the company that does our inspections. So that was great to hear a little bit more about what they do and how they work alongside the town. And then following that, we went through our consent agenda, which was approving our minute meetings. And then we had the funding request for Eagle After Hours. Let me zoom this in a little bit so you guys can hopefully see this a little better. Sometimes it's a little hard to see. Okay, so we had the funding request for Eagle After Hours. So that was fantastic. It's a great after-school program that we work to continue bringing things for our kids to do here in Wellington. I know that's one of the concerns a lot of people have had is, we don't have a lot of things for our kids to do, so we want to make sure that we are making sure to support and continue those few things that we have that still enable that. So I think that was a great thing. So it was awesome we were able to do that. The following thing we had was an appointment to the Planning Commission. We had two candidates that were both amazing candidates that were brought to the board. They were sent from the Planning Commission. Normally we get a recommendation from the Planning Commission on one candidate, and then the board approves that candidate or doesn't. In this case, there was no recommendation from the Planning Commission, so the board did interview both Dan Sattler and Linda Knack, and so I want to say thank you to both of them for being willing to be on the Planning Commission. They both are highly qualified and excellent individuals. After all the questions were answered, the board did vote to approve Linda Knack as the new member of the Planning Commission. So that was our item number 2. Yes, Christy. So Christy's on. Awesome. So she's saying thank you is critical for transparency and ethics, and also holding people accountable for both positive and negative decisions needs to be tracked for future decisions. And you're absolutely right, Christy. And I'm one I voted both ways. There have been things this year that I voted no on in the last couple of weeks, and you guys as a public, you need to know what those things are. And again, for my side, I'm happy for you to ask me anytime, but there needs to be something that even if I don't want to talk about it, that you have the ability to find that information regardless of what I say. So that's for me. I try to be an open book. So if you ever want to know why I voted somehow on an issue, please come and ask me. I'm happy to talk with you about why I did what I did. But Christy's comment is absolutely true. Okay, so next item, we had the annexation agreement for Pruder School District. That's been pushed off again because we're not quite ready to finalize that. So I believe it's been pushed to the next board meeting that we have in a couple of weeks. And then we had the resolution 19-2020, which was the org chart from our town administrator, which was approved. I covered this a little bit last week, and you guys can actually look at the file if you wanted to, but just kind of a layout of what we have going on and who do we have in what positions. And the big thing that came out of that is we have a lot of open spots right now that we need to get filled, and so we're going to be looking at how do we make that happen. So that's something that was critical. And then and two of those critical things that we're looking at filling. One is we do need to have right now we are in the place where we have an interim town administrator. We do need to get to where we have an actual full-time town administrator. Kelly's doing an amazing job, but we do actually need to, regardless of who we choose to put in that position, we do need to have someone that's an actual town administrator, but not in an interim capacity, as well as an economic development position. We do need to fill that. And my understanding is we're actually going to be having a discussion about those positions specifically, as well as other things at our board retreat, which is going to be coming up this weekend, which I will talk about at the end of the show as well. So that was great to have that from Kelly, and we've got a lot of stuff to fill, so we're going to work on that. Number 5 was Resolution 20-2020. This is in regards to watering restrictions, and that was put in place. So Ed Cannon, I know you had said earlier you did have some comments on water. I don't know if you wanted to make them here or at the Q&A at the end. I'll let you go either way. If you want to wait to the end, I'd be happy to hear them there. If they're specific to the watering restrictions, I would love to have your comments or questions. So if you have those, go ahead and type those into the chat. Short story is that we are basically double our water usage from prior years already back in May, I believe, and we haven't even hit the worst months of the year. And so the concerns that were brought up is, one, we're trying to get a new water plant built, so that's already a concern. But 2, we're in a position where the more we run that as close to or near capacity, the worse it's going to tear down the plant even worse. But the other thing is, I know historically there's been a lot of issues with our water quality and taste and odor that have been a big concern for people. And there's one of our specific, it's either well or plants that we have. Okay, great. That sounds good, Ed. I'll call them up for you on the Q&A. We can't treat the taste and odor issues. So if we have to turn that on, or when we have to turn that on, we're going to see those taste and odor issues that everyone in Wellington knows and hates are going to come back. And we really want to try and avoid that as much as we possibly can. So there was a lot of conversation. There was a lot of discussion to make sure that it's something we have to do. And basically what it came down to is the board did vote to approve the water restrictions. The one thing that we did ask for a change, because the initial thing was you would hopefully get a warning, but you were not required to have a written warning first. If you had if you had a horrible attitude with the water or with the neighborhood services officer, you could actually get a ticket on your first offense. So what the board did request is that there be a mandatory written notice. So you have to be given that ticket or notice of a warning first before you can get ticketed. But this is something that the town is taking very seriously, because we want to make sure that we are able to provide water. That's an essential service for our citizens. And with just everything that's been going on with COVID, we've got a lot more people home, we've got more people using water, then that is going to be an issue, and that is a concern. I know as of right now, there is not a plan to turn on the splash pads. I actually received a couple of comments and questions from citizens this last week in regards to seeing if we can find a way to do that. And I am actually going to bring that up with the town staff and find out, is there a way that we could get towards that or not? I don't know the answer to that question, but my ideal would be that we could, because I've got 5 children under the age of 10. So for them, this is a big deal, and they really want to be able to see that. So I think that's something that is hugely important. But that is kind of my thought on that one. Sorry, one second there. All right. Moving on. I'm just trying to get through all my notes here, guys, so bear with me. There was also a concern that was brought up by Jason Meadows in regards to the water fill station north of town being there, I guess, had been out of service, and I know that our town staff did say they are working on getting that fixed. But there is a lot of concern that it has continuously been a problem. And I would just ask, if any of you know someone or one of the people that has dealt with that issue, please let me know, reach out to me, so that it's something that I can continue to keep up on and make just be something I can keep focused on and talking to the town staff to make sure it doesn't get lost by the wayside. That's one of my big things. Is I tell people I want to help you solve the problems. I want to make sure that we do the best job that we can, but I can't fix things I don't know about. So if there is an issue or there is a problem, but you haven't let me or one of the other trustees know, there's nothing we can do to try and make sure it's fixed. I can only help with fixing things that are a problem. Kent Allen had a question about, is there a plan to hold buildings just because we're already running into issues? There is not anything in place right now that is specifically designed to stop new building. We're in a very interesting situation here in Wellington where a lot of our, what's the word I'm looking for? A lot of our revenue comes directly from the building of new homes and development. That's a lot of our revenue right now because we don't have a large tax base for sales tax. So we are in an interesting position where we are running into issues with our infrastructure because it's not able to support everything that we have. But at the same time, if we were to stop just cold turkey, no more building, we issue no permits and no one can build anything, then we're going to run into issues where we're not going to be able to fund things. So we're trying to figure out what that balance is, and that's one of the biggest challenges I think that the board has is how do we handle that and how do we manage that? And I wish I could tell you guys I have the perfect answer right now. I don't yet, but we're going to work towards making sure that we get that answer. So moving on to the next thing. So we did pass watering restrictions. Those are in place technically as of right now. So I would highly recommend, I know there should be communications coming out from the town if there's not already that talks about what those restrictions are and what they mean. So definitely keep your eyes open. If you don't know what they are or you haven't seen anything or you can't find it, please let me know. You can look at the board packet. It is in there. It does show that. But if you do have questions on that, let us know. The following item, we had the contract renewal for the Senior Resource Center. So that was renewed by the board unanimously, which I'm excited about. I've had a chance to meet with our seniors one time, and the common theme I heard from a lot of them is they really like, not that our senior center is super amazing, but just the people, the community, and the stuff that's going on there, they really appreciate that. So I'm glad to see that we can just continue to keep that renewed and keep that running and keep things working well. The 4th of July decision, item number 7, the board basically has officially, in communications with the CAC, had let the board know that it did not look like we were going to be able to do the parade and the festival activities and still maintain with current guidelines from the county and the state. So the decision was recommended to the board, and the Board of Trustees agreed with that decision that we're not going to hold the parade booths. We are going forward with fireworks. That is something the board chose to move forward with the fireworks, and at the moment we don't know exactly what that will look like yet, but the board has said we're going to move forward with fireworks and we'll figure out the details as we go down the road. So I think that's something that from everyone I've talked to is super important. We want to make sure we do it safely, but people want to make sure that we are able to have fireworks. So we had a discussion about tables and chairs. We've been working on getting more seating outdoors for our restaurants and businesses downtown. And so this was come to the board as a request to potentially have funds to purchase things to do that. And that was something that we voted to approve, I believe, up to $10,000 to purchase seating as needed for businesses. I say businesses because this is not strictly reserved to the restaurants. I want to make sure you guys know that. So any of the businesses on downtown have the ability to go through the process and request to have access to the right-of-way in front of their business. There is some, CDOT is starting to get involved and do things, so we don't know, that could change as we go, but I want to make sure everyone knows that this is open to all businesses on downtown. You can work with the town and see what we can do, because I know there was some comments that were brought up is we could potentially do some tables or chairs or benches outside some of our other businesses to give them places for people to wait while they're either waiting for an appointment at one of the salons or waiting for their car to finish being repaired or things like that. So this is not an exclusive restaurants only. It's ideal, it was originally planned for them, but it is open to all businesses in our downtown area. So would highly recommend that we do that. Item number 9, and that was passed by the board. So the board approved up to $10,000 to support our downtown businesses. Item number 9, this was just modifying special event liquor licensing. This was just to get us into just up to make sure that our code matched what is the state code. That was it. It was just an update to get us in line with what they had. The liquor license review board, that had to get rescheduled because we have to do that in person. We currently cannot deal with quasi-judicial issues online, so that will actually be happening at our, well, let me look at my calendar here. I believe it's June 30th. no, sorry, June 23rd. At our June 23rd meeting, we'll be going through the liquor license review for the Wellington Grow. Then we had our updates. We had a COVID-19 update from our staff town administrator. Overall, things are looking pretty good right now. I did also make a comment of thanks to our Public Works Department. There was a specific issue with the road on 6th Street that was brought to my attention. I took it to our town staff, and they were able to actually get a short-term solution in place while they work on getting paving done. So the citizen was very grateful that was dealt with, as well as I had asked if initially our board voted to have an indeterminate end to our emergency status because we're still technically in a state of emergency. That has to do with funding and everything that's going on with COVID-19. And so I just asked a question, can we put an end date on that versus just having it out there? And the answer was right now we're still need to be in a state of emergency because of how funding works with everything. So we are continuing in that. So that I'm going to wrap up there. If you guys do have any comments or questions specific to last week's board meeting, please feel free to throw those in chat. I'm going to go ahead and go over real quick our work session. So this next week is not a full-on board meeting. It's a work session. Basically what that means, it's still a public meeting. Public is still able to attend. The biggest difference is we're not making any decisions in a work session. What it is it's an opportunity for the board and town staff to kind of talk in more detail about an issue to try and figure out what direction are we thinking about heading, or what are our options, or just to you know, if we have to spend an hour or 2 hours, you know, trying to hammer out details to even figure out what do we even want to try and solve here, that we're not doing that in the middle of a board meeting. We try to have a separate meeting where we can do some of that. So we have a few items on here. We're going to be discussing with Larimer County, we're going to have Sheriff Justin Smith and Michael Raridan, who is our sergeant up here, are going to come out and talk to us about their use of force policy, which I am very grateful for them doing that. I think it's relevant with the things that we're going through, not just here, but all around the country. I think this is a concern for a lot of people, so I'm very happy to see that we're going to have this opportunity to talk with them. And my goal is that this will be something that we can then work. I know there are members of the community right now who are actually working on trying to put together a town hall with our local law enforcement. I think that is amazing, and my hope is that we will see that come to fruition, and that this may incorporate into being able to help them make sure that that happens, because I think that's just having those conversations started would be fantastic. Then we're going to have a follow-up discussion on the utility rates. From my understanding, our goal, and really my goal out of this, is for the board to arrive at kind of where we're leaning towards with what's going to happen with the water rates, so that we can have a very well publicized meeting for the public to really get out there, and because we need to hear from the public, because we're looking at some pretty drastic changes in our water rates, but we need to make sure that people understand what's going on, what went into that, and we need to hear from the public. I think that's one of the most important things. Is we've heard from the experts, we've heard from a lot of things, we've got a lot of information, but I think to me the biggest piece of information that we're missing right now is what you think and what your concerns are. So I do want to make sure that we're able to get that. And then we're going to be having an update on Tract F. This is something that has been an ongoing issue at the town. I don't know all of the details. I've got a little bit of information, but we're going to have an update on that. And then we are also going to be doing a quarterly review with Kelly, or going over to do a quarterly review with our interim town administrator. This is something that Kelly requested of the board when she was brought on board as our interim town administrator. So I'm looking forward to going through that, and just appreciate the work that she's doing, but I do want to make sure that we're able to get into that. All right, so let me see here. So that was our board work session. So, okay, the upcoming board retreat. So I need to ask about this because there's nothing on the calendar right now on the town website, and I know that this is it's technically a public meeting, and so it does need to be publicized. But this Friday and this coming Saturday, so that'd be Friday the 19th and Saturday the 20th, the town board of Wellington is going to be meeting. I think Friday we start at 5 and go to 8:30 p.m. and then on Saturday we're going to be starting at 8 or 8:30 in the morning, and then going till 3:30. I think we start at 8 and go to 3:30. And basically what it's going to be is the idea behind the board retreat, as I understand it, is really for the board to understand and kind of come together with what is a vision and a plan of what we want to see accomplished here in this 2 years. What are the issues we want to make sure we dealt with, and also just for us to learn how to work together. As I mentioned, I think we're going to be discussing from staffing. The two main areas I know that are big issues that we need to make decisions on and move with is the town administrator position, what we want to do with that, and having that filled with someone full-time, as well as the economic development position and what we want to do with that. And I think those are things that I've been told we're going to go over when we have that. So I think that's something that's very important for us to have. So this is different from your traditional meetings in the sense that it's not a, we're not making policy, we're not making decisions. It's not going to be something where the public can just come in and talk about, oh, here's this or that or this other thing. So it'll be something that will, you're welcome to come and listen and hear what's going on. I don't foresee that there will really be opportunity for the public to interact much with the board at this, so it's kind of your call. And we will be meeting at the Edwards House on Mountain Street in Fort Collins. So we're actually not even meeting in Wellington. We're meeting at the Edwards House. So if you do have any thoughts or questions on that, feel free to let me know. I'm happy to answer what little I do know. This is my first time being to the board retreat, so I still have a lot to learn on that one. So, all right, so moving on into the community conversations, the big things that I've heard from people are really concerns about our water and the restrictions. And the big thing, like I mentioned earlier, is can we get the splash pads turned on, even if it's at a lesser degree, or what does that look like? And I think that's a question that I'm going to have for the town staff to see what that would look like from a COVID restriction standpoint, and then from a water standpoint, if we could find some way to do reduced hours, and then if we can find something that is a possible solution, then I would like to bring that before the board as a, hey, this is a potential solution we have to do something here. But again, it's something I want to hear from this community as well, because obviously, right, I have small children. I have small children that would love to play in the splash pad. I have small children that I would normally let run in the sprinkler, but that they can't right now because of watering restrictions. Not everyone in Wellington is in that boat. And right now we're all being hit with these watering restrictions. So I know there are a lot of concerns that if we're, fining people if they use this, if they're watering on wrong days or whatever, but then we as the town are out there running the splash pad, that is concerning. And I think it's very valid. So I do want to make sure that we are listening to your concerns so that we can make a decision that we feel is best. So please be engaged in that conversation. Look for that to keep coming forward, and would love to hear your thoughts on that. So I do want to go ahead and open things up to questions and answers. So if you do have any Q&A, please, I would love to hear them. I know Ed Cannon, if you're still on, you had some questions or comments on the town's water dedication policy. I would love to hear those. For those of you who do not know, Ed Cannon was our town administrator prior to Kelly being our interim town administrator, and from my view, has done a fantastic job, and appreciate the work that he's done, and the team he has put in place has just done fantastic. So any thoughts or comments, Ed, you have on our town water, I would love to hear them. I would highly value them. So if you have those, I would love to hear them. And anyone else, if you have questions, I would love to hear those from you guys as well. And the sound didn't die. I just stopped talking there for a second. Yes. Ed, do you have Zoom? If you have Zoom, I can. 1 second. If you have my email, Ed, I don't know if I have yours. Give me 1 second. And I can give you the link to my Zoom meeting, Ed, and then you should be able to join that. Can you send me in a private message your email address, and I can send that to you? Give us just a moment here, guys. We're gonna work on see if we can make this work. I'm getting to test my abilities real time here. This is exciting. So, second here. Actually, I might be able to do this different. Okay, Ed, I just sent you the link to my Zoom meeting, so you should be able to join through there. So give us just a moment here, guys, while I get this. If anyone else has any questions, please do throw those into the chat while we work on getting things set up here. Get to have lots of guests. I like it. Oh, I did want to bring up, while we're getting this set up, there was one other thing that was brought up to me in this last week in regards to just keeping things cleaned up around the town. I know it's, especially we have code enforcement and different things like that. There's questions about, will it work? Is it happening, or should we do this or that? And I know that we are working on trying to just keep things cleaned up. I know there was an issue brought to my attention where we had a town property that had trash and garbage bags and things all over the place. We're working on getting that. It was cleaned up. I don't know. I haven't driven by it in the last couple of days, so I don't know if it is currently clean at the moment. But it is something that we have been working on to get that set up to where we can allow, really, that we can set the example, right? Because it's one thing for us to, be going out and saying, well, you can't have this or you can't have that. But then when it's us, the town, who has things that they're a mess or they're not clean or our things aren't looking good, it's really not great for us to be telling somebody else that, hey, your property is not nice, but ours is the same. And so really my goal is that we try to back things up as much as we can. And so I would just, again, encourage you guys, if you see issues, you see areas of concern, please reach out and let me know. I would love to address them. I'd love to work with them and make sure that those things are dealt with. But I can't work on or try to address issues that I don't know. So it really comes down to the more communication from you guys about the issues or concerns that you see with the town, or in my case, I'm specifically a member of the board, as you see issues with the board that you think need to be addressed differently or they aren't being addressed. I want to hear from you guys what those issues are so that I can make sure that we address those. And it's been really great for me to have this last week I've actually had, I think, 3 different citizens that have reached out to me with different issues that they've wanted to talk about. And I think that's fantastic. And I just want to make sure that we're able to do that and hear from you guys. So that's my little post there. All right, Ed is connecting. So hopefully we'll get to hear from Ed. Give me 1 second here. And I'm going to switch this. This is full screen. All right. Are you there, Ed?
I'm here. Can you
Awesome.
hear me?
I can, and I think everyone else can. Would love to hear your comments. So I know you know probably about as much about our water as most people do. I'd love to hear you share.
Well, first of all, John, I just want to say congratulations on your election to the town board. I am very proud of the job you're doing. And the time that I've been here, you're the first trustee that's actually reached out and on a regular basis and engaged with the public. And I appreciate that. I'm sure the public does as well. So something that's needed. Keep it up the good work. And I wish you all the best there. Now, as far as the water goes, long story short, a couple of weeks ago, the board approved a purchase of 10 shares of North Poudre. Those shares cost over $200,000 a piece, and for a total price of over $2 million. That was about 1/3 of the town's raw water reserves.
Yes, it was.
Okay. Now, 10 shares of North Poudre under our current policy, under the town's current policy, is probably enough for about 25 homes, which isn't a lot of homes, but there's something else that the town needs to be considering. And I'm just going to throw this out there and let you think about this. The town has not changed its water dedication policy since April of 2017. In April of 2017, it wrote a new water policy. It allowed cash in lieu from builders so that they could pay cash instead of coming up and dedicating shares. There was a good couple of reasons for doing that. At the time, the town was still unsure whether or not North Poudre would allow us to use shares of North Poudre and the CBT portion of that for municipal water. During my time there, we were able to talk with North Poudre and get some concessions with that. And the consensus between North Poudre and the town was that we have a contract, goes back to 1983, which governs the 53 shares the town donated back then for up to 2,000 acre feet of water per year. North Poudre shares are a second contract. It's a separate contract. And the concessions that we receive from North Poudre is that, yes, we can use that. Now, there's some issues with delivery because they have to go through a series of exchanges and you'll lose something on that.
Okay.
But my observation is quite frankly this. I was a little dismayed that the town would take a third of its water resources and buy 10 shares of North Poudre Water. The town should, and I'm going to make a recommendation, look at that water dedication policy. This was something I was working on earlier this year when I was negotiating with North Poudre and Elko and other water providers about getting municipal water to the town. The town needs to change its water dedication policy. And I would recommend that the town make a 100% share dedication instead of cash in lieu. Now, if the town had done that policy, the developers would have paid for those $2 million worth of North Poudre shares and given them to the town in order to build their houses. And they'd probably given them more water. But right now, with our current policy, with the town's current policy, you're losing about $80,000 per share. So that needs to be updated right away. Secondly, you need to preserve those water funds, those raw water reserve funds, because North Poudre water or CBT water is difficult to get to Wellington. There is no direct path. It has to go through a series of exchanges, which means you lose some of that water through that. The advantage of North Poudre is there's an ag portion to every share of that. And you can barter the ag portion with North Poudre so that you can get as much of a full delivery of the CBT portion as you can. So the reason I was a little dismayed is that $6 million reserve that the town had, and I think the town has about $7 million in raw water infrastructure reserves as well. So together it's about $13 million the town had to help develop new water resources for the town. By changing the policy to a dedication so that the developers and the builders will actually dedicate shares, they're responsible for buying the shares. They'll dedicate those to the town. The town will bank those shares and use those shares. And by doing that, we also reduce the amount of money that the contract water will cost us, because we can still negotiate with North Poudre so that we can use those shares first and then the contract water second. That contract water is tied to the price of the shares.
Yes.
And the price of that water has been going up and up and up every year. Yes, it
absolutely has.
It certainly has. But the last comment I'll have on that is banking on North Poudre water or CBT water, because those supplies are dwindling, is not going to be sufficient. It's not going to be sustainable for the town. What you need to be doing, or what you should be doing, is exploring other resources for the water. One of those resources is called NISP. That's the Northern Integrated Supply Project. I worked for probably about 2 years with Northern Water and with a couple of communities. There's 15 communities that are members of the NISP consortium. 2 of those communities would like to divest a little bit of their shares. And it's possible that the town could enter into an agreement between those towns so that they can buy their portion of the NISP shares. Now, the way NISP works is 1 share gives you 1 acre-foot of water, and it gives you about 4.5 acre-feet of storage in the reservoir that they're building. That would be probably the only new water source that's available out there. My thought was somewhere around 400 to 500 shares. It would cost the town some money. It certainly would. And there's no price tag on what that was. The last time I checked, the cost of the whole construction project was still over $1.2 billion.
Okay.
And the cost of that project is shared by the shareholders. And 500 shares is roughly about 3 to 4% of the NISP project. So you'd be basically responsible for that portion of that.
Okay.
Right now, Northern Water has pretty much got a restriction on anybody divesting in their NISP shares. And that's because they're still going through the permitting process.
Okay.
And any changes to the ownership on there could set that whole project back.
Okay.
But there's still an opportunity. to discuss, and I can speak with you privately and tell you about the two municipalities that might be interested in divesting. There's a possibility that you could enter into a purchase agreement on those shares that you execute after the permits are approved and the project gets its go-ahead. Each of these towns have paid so much per the share. I think the last cost I got was about $1,000 per share.
Okay.
So about half $500,000 would have got you about 500 shares of NISP.
Okay.
And then the project would have been, you still have to pay for the additional portion of that. And that could be, $40 or $50 million over a long run. But you can always adjust your impact fees. You can always adjust your fee structure and such like that to help pay for that infrastructure cost and amortize that over a 20-year period. So it's an opportunity that the town could take advantage of. But if you deplete your water reserves fund, buying shares at an outrageous price, you're just not going to be able to afford to do anything different with that. So I just want to throw that out there to let people be considering that, because the water with Wellington has always got to be sustainable. You've got to find a way that you can invest in the town's future. The town has explored a couple of options with non-renewable water sources. Those seemed attractive, but there's always the case of what if that water runs out? Then what do you do? So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there. Something that I know that COVID has got everybody's on edge right now.
I know, yeah, it's a bit crazy.
There's a lot of turmoil right now in Wellington, and you know what? I appreciate you and the rest of the board and the mayor doing what you can to keep Wellington safe. I appreciate the work Kelly is doing. And anyway, if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me, John.
No, I will absolutely, Ed, and I'll thank you for giving me an email address. I will reach out, and I may even ask you to help me. We had several board members assigned to a specific task force to deal with this type of issues, and I would love to forward your concerns and comments on to them. So I may work with you on letting you help me put that together, because I don't want to do. I could not do justice to what you just shared. So I would appreciate your comments. So thank you for sharing those, and I will definitely follow up with you, because I'd love to get those in greater detail.
Certainly, John. Keep up the good work. Okay?
All right. Thanks so much, Ed.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Well, that's going to go ahead and wrap things up for today. So thank you again to Ed Cannon for hopping on and just sharing comments. And I don't have any other questions. So with that, I want to let you guys have a great rest of the day, and I will see you guys next week.